Hi, this is Terry from Fabric Junction, and I'm going to show you today how to use up some of your stash, doing some projects I call Scrappy Quilting with 8.5-inch squares. Now I like to work with 8.5-inch squares on some of my projects because I can get 5 squares out of 1/4 of a yard. So anytime I have any little things left over, 8.5 is a nice size square. Now I've been cleaning stuff, going through, and I came across a bunch of my squares that I had cut, and so I decided to make them into quilts. This is the simplest of them. Here's the 8.5-inch square. All I did here is I split it. And then as you can see, I alternated the blocks and the rectangles just to create this super simple quilt. So my little rectangles alternate. As you can see, all just super simple. I didn't use a ton of different pieces, but that's okay. Maybe you have all kinds of pieces. So I'll open it up a little bit, and I think you get the idea of how simple this one is. Just using 8.5-inch squares, and then these were 8.5-inch squares, but they were cut in half. Okay, from there, I decided to be a little more creative, and you remember doing disappearing 9 patch? The one behind me is a disappearing 9 patch done in just 2 fabrics. I had enough of these 2 pieces to create this. I think this would look great scrappy. If that's the way you want to go, if that's what you have, that's wonderful. The other plus side is 8.5-inch squares. I only needed to create basically 4 blocks by 3 blocks. I'm going the wrong way. I have 3 going this way, I have 4 down. The quilt went together extremely fast. So as a reminder, on your disappearing 9 patch, I have one sitting here. When I did it in 2 colors, I picked whatever color I wanted in the middle. And you remember the disappearing 9 patch, we cut it down the middle and cut it across. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this because it is so big, and I want to line up my seams. And I know it doesn't want to lay perfectly flat at the moment. That's because I did rip my pieces and I didn't take time to get them to stay perfectly square. But for this, I just need to show you the technique. When you do it, you'll have your squares looking beautiful, I know. Anyway, okay, so I need to measure, so I have kind of an idea. I'm right at it. I'm at 7 3/4. So I need to split that 7 3/4, and I know that's a terrible number. So 7 3.5, 3 5/8. So I can line up on my seam 3 1/2, 5/8. There we go. Cut. Make sure I'm staying as straight as I can. I must have a little nick in my blade. And then sometimes what I do is if I have it all lined up, I gotta find my seam allowance, seam allowance, seam allowance. I can also just with the scissors, and of course that's what our pieces look like. Let me do this one real quick. I want to stay lined up. because it is big. Now this one is shorter, and it's you know, I'll go back and do it the other way. Because it is shorter, I can line up my, here's my 5/8. I can line up my 5/8 right on my, there we go. Oh. So I know this is going to come out there. Okay. And again. Your blade gets nicks in it between the blade and my batting. Or not my batting, my mat. It'll have. Okay. Here's our fresher course on our disappearing 9 patch. We have it cut. We did our 2 cuts. All I do is I've taken this one and I bring it over here, and this one goes to the top, and that's what creates this wonderful look that we get right here. So it creates a very different looking 9 patch that I don't think most people would recognize, because I use such big pieces. And this would be great if you have a design on here that had some beautiful flowers or beautiful scenery, beautiful whatever, just beautiful, and you didn't want to cut it into tiny pieces. This might be a great way to use up that fabric. Had to think of what we were working with. We're working with fabric. So, moving on. I still had lots of pieces left over. And on this particular one, I had muslin left over. Remember back when the only backing available was muslin? Well, I have a lot of muslin scraps. So I decided to do one of my scrappy quilts using muslin and, again, 8-inch squares. Now, it doesn't look like 8-inch squares, but they were. And this particular one was a 4-patch. So hopefully you recognize the 4-patch. And you could do it real scrappy, 2-color, your choice. So I put my 4-patch together. I measured from my center line out 2 inches, because that number was a lot easier for me to remember. So I get it lined up, I get lined up across, lined up down, there we go. So I take off 2 inches. I go to my other side, get it lined up again, so I'm taking off just 2 inches. And then the last direction, I have to shift just a little because I want it lined up nice and straight. That one looks good, that one looks good. So on the 4-patch, to get that look, takes just a hair longer, but it creates that beautiful look. Straight, straight. Like that. There. So on the 4-patch, it takes 2 cuts to create that look, and I know I've got little parts. When I cut those different directions instead of just my regular straight ahead, I know my grip isn't near as strong and as steady, so I know I end up getting all these little pieces. But you get the idea that now I have my 4-patch, and once again, if I remember right, on that quilt I made exactly 12 blocks, laid it out so that it was a 3 by 12, and I had enough muslin to add it to the border to make it just a smidgen bigger. Yeah. Might want to think about changing my blade. Sometimes I do so much cutting I forget how dull my blade can get. There's our pieces. And let me see what I did. We need to trade and trade. Get it turned. So now we have the muslin in between. We have everything alternates. Get it turned. There we go. That one looks good. Turn this one. There we go. There is the block. And all we used was 4 8.5-inch squares. I hope this gives you some ideas on what you can do with your scraps. Like I said, make them very scrappy, make them planned, your choice. But a great way to use up some of your scrap, or like I said, maybe that one piece that you really didn't want to cut into little sections because you lose too much. Cut it into 8.5-inch squares and make the first one just simple squares with rectangles. Maybe it's going to be the disappearing 9 patch or the disappearing 4 patch. Thank you for watching us here at Fabric Junction. Do stop by and see us sometime and check us out on our website at junctionfabric.com. Thank you again.